Hello, welcome back. In this video, we are going to be discussing blood vessels that are attached to the heart itself. So the first blood vessel is the one that brings blood from the upper extremities and from the head area back into the heart, specifically into the right atrium, and that is called the superior vena cava, and it's located right here. And then from below the level of the heart, blood is brought in through the inferior vena cava. As you can see in the lower left-hand drawing, the heart sits right on the diaphragm. And so the blood vessel that is traveling through the diaphragm, bringing all the blood from below, whether it's from the digestive system or reproductive system or urinary system or from your lower extremities, it all is traveling in this inferior vena cava, which you can see a little bit anteriorly. But if you look on the posterior side of the heart, it's very easy to see the inferior vena cava below and the superior vena cava above that. So remember, because we're looking at the posterior side, that is why the right is on the right and the left is on the left. Otherwise, if you're looking anteriorly, it's the other way around. So on the upper left, we're looking at the anterior view from the heart. So we have inferior vena cava on the left side, which is the right side of the heart. The next blood vessel is the one that is attached to the pulmonary valve, and it is the most anterior blood vessel of the heart, and that is called the pulmonary trunk. So it is painted blue because it's carrying partially deoxygenated blood, okay? However, it is not a vein. So if you think that red is an artery and blue is a vein, you are sadly mistaken. Red is indicating that the blood is maximally oxygenated. It's coming from blood that came from the lungs, whereas blue is indicating a blood vessel that is trying to carry blood back to the lungs. It has been partially deoxygenated. Now, the pulmonary trunk is the only blood vessel where blood exits the right ventricle. So it's where all the blood going to the lungs is. But now we have to split it into two so we can have blood go to the right lung and blood go to the left lung. And so going to the left lung would be the left pulmonary artery, which is easily seen in this picture of the heart. And then partially hidden, you can see the other branch, which is the right pulmonary artery going to the right lung. If you do a posterior view of the heart highlighted in pink, that is the right pulmonary artery going off to the right side. And then this part I'm pointing to now would be the left pulmonary artery going off to the left lung. So blood goes to the lungs, picks up oxygen, and now is returning to the left side of the heart. And as I stated earlier, there are two pulmonary veins coming in from each side of the heart, which is why in this uppermost picture, you can see that there are 4 pink openings, 2 on the left for the 2 left pulmonary veins. The 2 I am not pointing to on this picture, those are going to be the 2 openings for the right pulmonary veins. So on this model of the heart, you can clearly see inside the left atrium the 2 openings for the pulmonary veins, and you can also see little bits of the blood vessel on the outside, which are the 2 left pulmonary veins. On the posterior view of the heart, you can see the 2 left pulmonary veins there as well. So these are the pulmonary veins here, and so that makes this the left ventricle over here. And if you follow along, if you see these blood vessels over there, those are going to be the right pulmonary veins. Okay, so this is the posterior view of the heart. Here's the posterior view of the model, where you can see the 2 right pulmonary veins posteriorly, and over here on the left side, you can see one of the 2 left pulmonary veins. The next blood vessel I want to talk about is now blood is trying to leave the left side of the heart. It's exiting through the aortic valve from the left ventricle, and it's going to enter the aorta. And the aorta has several areas. Okay. So when the aorta is attached to the heart, the first thing the blood has to do is go in an upward direction. And so this part of the aorta is called the ascending aorta because blood goes in an upward direction. After this, if you look on the lateral view on the far left, you can see the ascending aorta, and then the blue area is showing this arch area, and then after which blood will descend through the chest and descend through the abdomen. So the arch part is called the aortic arch or the arch of the aorta. You know you're in the arch because there are 3 huge blood vessels that leave the arch of the aorta. One other interesting thing in the arch of the aorta is that there is a band of dense connective tissue called the ligamentum arteriosum. So remember, a ligament is dense connective tissue. It's called a ligamentum because it's not technically a ligament, it's not collecting bones, but it looks just like a ligament because it's dense, regular connective tissue. And it's called arteriosum because it's between 2 arteries. And you're going, wait a second, it's connecting a blue with a red. But if you remember, the pulmonary arteries are blue because they are carrying deoxygenated blood away from the heart towards the lung. So it's connecting between the pulmonary arteries and the arch of the aorta. And this is a remnant of a structure you had in utero, which will be talked about during lecture. That's the ligamentum arteriosum. On almost every model, it's represented as this white structure. But in real life, obviously it's not white, but it's super easy to see in everybody because everybody had the original structure before they were born. All right, so let's talk about the blood supply to the heart muscle itself. So the blood vessels, there are 2 blood vessels that bring blood to the heart muscle itself. That endocardium can probably get enough nutrients as the blood is going through because it's only 1 cell layer. And maybe the next couple layers of cell get enough by diffusion. But you know, when that heart muscle is 1 centimeter thick, there's no way it can get adequate nutrition. So it has its own blood vessels. And its blood vessels come off of the ascending aorta just above the aortic valve. So you're like this far, literally 3 millimeters above the cusp of the aortic valve, and you're going to have 2 blood vessels bringing blood back to the heart. So the first blood vessel is called the right coronary artery because it is going to supply most of the right side of the heart. And when we look at the heart external surface, let me just stop for a second and talk about the external surface of the heart. There's usually a sulcus, some kind of depression that we can see externally between all the different chambers. And it's in these depressions that these main blood vessels are found. So the right coronary artery is your landmark because it sits in the groove between the right atrium above it and the right ventricle below it. And from it, there's going to be lots of branches, none of the names we're going to learn. So here is the right atrium coming off of the aorta, going into that groove between the right atrium and the right ventricle. And then it circles around and does some of the posterior muscle on the right side as well. And just to the left of this, there's a left coronary artery that comes off, but it comes off right here, so you cannot see it if the pulmonary trunk is there. All you can see is a little bit of it once it has come out from behind the pulmonary trunk right there. So in this CAT scan view, which is a transverse section, this is the aorta, and then to it is the pulmonary trunk. And so you clearly can see the left coronary artery going posterior to the pulmonary trunk to come out. That's all the left coronary is. As soon as you see branching, you are no longer in the left coronary artery. So all you see is this little piece. There is one heart muscle that's where the pulmonary trunk does not exist where you can see the entire pathway, but otherwise, this is all you're going to see, just a little distal portion of the left coronary artery. When the left coronary artery branches, one branch goes down the anterior surface of the heart all the way towards what's called the apex of the heart, way down here. And so as you can see, it's traveling in a downward direction on the anterior surface. And so it is called the left anterior descending artery. And that is in the groove between the right ventricle and the left ventricle. In contrast to the left anterior descending artery, the other branch of the left coronary artery kind of like takes a left-hand turn and goes across an almost transverse plane because it is traveling between the left atrium up above it and the left ventricle down below it. And this artery does the whole front surface of the heart, and then on the posterior surface goes and does all of the posterior left heart muscle as well. And like it's going around in a circumference on the left side of the heart. And so this artery is called the circumflex artery. So that's it for the arteries. The left coronary artery has a left anterior descending branch and a circumflex artery branch, whereas the other blood vessel to the right side of the heart is called the right coronary artery. Now, as far as the veins of the heart, we're only going to learn one, and that's the biggest vein. And its origin, so remember, a vein is carrying blood back towards the inside of the heart. So we start distal and then we work our way back towards the heart. We do not work at the heart and go away. So where we're going to start with this vein is we're going to start way down here by the apex of the heart. Where the left anterior descending artery ended is where the origin of this vein is. And if you notice, it travels right next to the left anterior descending artery. And arteries and veins like to do that. It's like two-way traffic on a two-way street where arteries carrying blood one direction and the vein right next to it's carrying blood the other direction. So that's the start of the left of the great cardiac vein. And then what happens is it usually kind of cuts off the corner and then it will travel next to the circumflex artery. Okay. It doesn't usually make a square corner like shown in this model. It's more kind of cutting off the corner. And so it does the whole anterior surface of the heart, and then it goes on the posterior surface of the heart as well. On the posterior surface of the heart, this essentially is where the end of the great cardiac vein is. As soon as you start seeing blood vessels posteriorly draining blood into it, you are no longer in the great cardiac vein. You are in a structure known as the coronary sinus. So, did you notice that the vein didn't have that word coronary, it had that word cardiac? Yeah. So all the veins of the heart have the word cardiac in them. All the arteries of the heart will be coronary arteries. So what is a coronary sinus? Because the word coronary should mean artery. Plus it doesn't have the word vein. So it's called a sinus because we are using the other definition of the word sinus. We're out of a bone, so it's not an air-filled space in a bone. The word sinus, once you're out of a bone, means it's a structure similar to a vein, but it does not have the three typical layers and all the anatomical requirements of a vein, but it means it's going to be carrying venous blood. So the coronary sinus is where all the veins of the heart drain into, so it's full of venous blood. And from the coronary sinus, blood dumps back into the right atrium through, can you remember what it enters through? That's right, through that opening of the coronary sinus, right above the tricuspid valve. So that means that if you were looking at this picture of the heart, over here is the left ventricle, the great cardiac vein coming around, then we have the coronary sinus, And when we're way over here, this blue part, this is right atrium. So here's a close-up view of the posterior part of the heart, which has been clearly labeled for you. The inferior vena cava is down there, which makes this the superior vena cava up there. I also want to remind you, this is the ascending aorta, and here's the aortic arch, which is with its 3 branches. You can clearly see the little ligamentum arteriosum there, which meant the pulmonary trunk was here, and we would have a left pulmonary artery and a right pulmonary artery. Just below those, you have the right pulmonary veins and the left pulmonary veins, and they both dump into the left ventricle, which makes this other structure, sorry, they both dump into the left atrium, which makes this other structure the right atrium, which makes sense because the inferior and superior vena cava dump into the right atrium. Below the 2 atria, coming around on the left side, you had the great cardiac vein, but now we have other veins dumping into it. So this is all coronary sinus, and then the coronary sinus is going to dump into the right atrium as well. So with that, we are done. I hope you got that all. If you have any questions about this part, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in class soon. Thank you.